day to the Adam Messer Show here on WRU-LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul, and this is the second hour of our show today, and our special guest is Patrick Roper. We've been talking about acting and set life and stuff like that. Welcome back, Patrick. Thank you for being here with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited, man. So, like the end of the last hour, we were talking about Dennis Lawson, and then Kane. I can't remember his first name. What did you say his
Michael
name?
Caine, yeah.
Michael Caine, yeah. And talking about like just some of the nuts and bolts of what actors should know. So, can you talk a little bit more about, especially like with Dennis Lawson, like where we were wrapping up there? Can you kind of dive into that a little bit more? You said that he was helping his nephew out and decided like, hey, wait a minute, there's a need here that people who are coming out of the theater, need to know for film, transitioning to acting on, film sets.
Yeah, I mean, historically speaking, there used to not, prior to Michael Caine actually writing a book and coming up with his video back in the 1980s, there really weren't anybody teaching film acting skills. I mean, you might find people doing it a little here and there, but kind of, probably in LA, but for the most part, it just wasn't done. What was happening mostly is that people would come out of acting school or wherever they came from, and you kind of learned, trial by fire on set.
Okay.
Which there tends to be a very good sort of history in the acting world of mentoring the next coming generation, and I always encourage people to find mentors when they're just starting out, and please become mentors when you get up to a certain level. That's certainly what I like to try to do as much as possible. There's tons of people that are doing better than me, and I always look up to them and ask them questions and learn from them. Likewise, I'm kind of in a middle area of my career, and there's a ton of people that are not quite where I'm at, so I always like to look on down there and try and help them with what they're doing. So there's this constant mentoring that goes on in the film and just generally acting.
I want to interject something on that too about mentorship, Patrick, because I love mentorship. And one of the things, because it applies to life, it's not just acting, it applies to life and every aspect of your life. But I have really enjoyed, I have friends who are, I don't typically make friends with underage kids, but like 18 and older, I mean, like I know kids, like family members' kids and stuff like that. And I don't want to say I'm friends with them like that. I don't want to, sound strange or weird or whatever. But young adults and older, even like, when I'm talking with, family members, younger kids and stuff like that. And then I have friends that are, in their 70s and 80s. And I love being able to talk to people from, different backgrounds and, different age groups and stuff like that. And, I feel like it's an exchange. When you have a genuine exchange in that relationship with someone, and you're just like, for example, being friends just to be friends or whatever, and you have that genuine exchange, you can learn and teach at the same time. And I feel like mentorship is important, and giving back, is important. I feel like, especially when because like for me, example, I'm not famous. I'm not, anybody special either. I have, I've been published as a journalist, and I've done my radio show, and I've published books. But I'm not anybody famous, but I try to help people who, that they're trying to do some of the things that I'm doing. And then I also look at what other people are doing that I want to do. So I really think that that's an important aspect of, any part of life, whatever your thing is that you want to do, you can learn and teach it, on any level that you're at.
Yeah. I mean, it's always important to keep your ego in check, and know that you always have stuff to learn, and you always have stuff to give. And also, it's like as I'm curating the site, I throw out a lot of ideas, and I will always tell anybody, some of these ain't going to work for you. Um, they're not for you. They're not. They're not
Yeah.
going to click,
Yeah.
and that's fine. They'll click for somebody. You know, I have my own process. I can tell you what some of my process is. Sometimes it's not the same process for every role. Sometimes that process
Mm-hmm.
differs because every role is different,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why it's good to know this broad range of stuff, because you have a little toolbox and you sort of can, the sometimes you have something that requires a wrench. You can
Yeah.
take the wrench out, and sometimes it needs a hammer, and there's just different skill sets for different things. So it's good to be multifaceted that way.
I like to use this mindset of I can share with you what I know, but I can't prescribe to you what you should do.
Yeah, I think I posted something recently, and I studied martial arts when I was much younger. And primarily, since I was growing up in Seattle, I studied Jeet Kune Do, which
Oh, you
was,
did?
yeah. So,
Oh, very cool.
I mean, I'd started
The
out in a
Tao of
very
Jeet Kune Do is like one of
formal,
my favorite books, man.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I started out in kind of a very formal kung fu structure, studying Hung Gar, and that's a very classic form. But like every kid growing up, I thought Bruce Lee was the bomb. So,
Yeah.
and he spent a lot of time in Seattle. As he's buried there, I used to go visit his grave a couple times a year.
Oh, wow.
Um, and I always appreciated his philosophies, and a lot of the philosophy of Jeet Kune Do, for those that don't know, is that Bruce Lee kind of wanted to strip the formality out of martial arts structures and make sort of a baseline fighting style that you could graft anything onto effectively. So if you
Mm-hmm.
learned, a lot of really formal martial arts, you could pick and choose what you needed.
Yeah, he like
What
mixed
you,
boxing and
yeah,
weightlifting and all kinds of stuff. And then the other thing, kind of he went against the grain where he was teaching, basically Americans and non, I don't know, like I don't know if it was just because he's Chinese. I don't know if it was that he wasn't allowed to teach that or if it was like whatever. But I know that he had a lot of backlash about that.
yeah. There were definitely at that time period a lot of people in the very formal Chinese martial arts community that felt that none of this stuff was particularly for outsiders. It wasn't supposed to be taught to outsiders. So
Right, right.
he kind of went against the grain with a lot of them, and he's just said, look, I'm opening this up to everybody,
Yeah.
and a lot of, like, I posted a quote from him, or actually I posted a quote from Denzel Washington, who had mentioned exactly this thing, quoting Bruce Lee. He was like, look, Bruce Lee created this fighting style, a system, a philosophy that allows you to sort of center and neutralize yourself, and you can graft whatever you learn in the
Mm-hmm.
universe onto that. So it's not just a fighting style, it's a philosophy
Right,
about,
right.
and I have found that actually functionally more useful for acting than almost anything.
I love that, Patrick. There's two of his philosophies that I love to follow. The first is be like water. That's not easy to do, but I love that to be like water and be flexible and be strong. The other one is and I don't know exactly. I'm pretty sure this one's Bruce Lee, but I can't say definitively it's Bruce Lee. But it's always been attributed to him that I know of. Is that I never prayed for an easy life. I pray for the endurance, or I pray for the strength to endure a hard life. And those are two things. Like I was like you. I mean, I grew up loving Bruce Lee, and Jackie Chan is if one of my favorites as well. And Bruce Lee took a liking to Jackie Chan, and Jackie Chan's career was it basically blossomed because of Bruce Lee. And I love the fact that his legacy has persisted and it's influenced unknown numbers of people.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's so cool. I would have never known that about you and Bruce Lee and studying Jeet Kune Do.
Yeah, that was, I would come home every day from school, practice, practice, practice. So at one point in my life, I was quite limber and quite fast.
I think it's cool though because it does give you like a mental toughness, and it also humbles you. I haven't rolled in a while, but I practiced jujitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu for a while, and it has a way of humbling you um, when you practice it. It also gives you a respect for other people. I feel like any sort of discipline training, it doesn't necessarily have to be martial arts. It could be, whether you're just training physically, you're training your body, you're training mentally, anything that you're trying to do to better yourself um, in a determined way, like a practiced, actionable way, I feel like is a great way to go.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Jeet Kune Do and the philosophies around what the philosophies that she wrote about.
Your phone's cutting out there just a hair, bud.
Oh, can you hear me? Can you
Yeah,
hear me
I can
now?
hear you. Yeah, I
All
get.
right.
Yeah, it's a lot better. Yeah.
So yeah, the philosophies um, that he wrote about were so much about. I mean, again, most people will probably look at some of it and go, "Oh, it's about fighting." It's like, no, it's not about fighting. He actually got a degree in philosophy. It's about life. I find when I read his writings and his works that it helps me check myself. It helps me balance myself. It helps
Yeah.
me get back to a center. And obviously, a lot of his stuff is very Eastern-based philosophy. There's a lot of Taoist philosophy and Buddhist philosophy that's involved in that. But he, again, did not really prescribe specifically to any of that. He just sort of prescribed to taking what you need from the world and creating a neutral enough place in yourself that you can utilize whatever you need.
Well, like with be like water, it's a way to reflect on, not being rigid, still being strong, but not being rigid and having the flexibility to go with the flow, and having the flexibility to adapt, like you said, taking a little bit of this, a little bit of that, kind of making a hodgepodge of what works for you. So how have you applied that with acting? You started telling me about that. How have you applied that to acting?
So one thing that I tend to stress with people is like this is so critically important is have a life outside of this whole thing.
Oh yeah.
You need to really have a robust life because so many people that will get into this. It's like, oh, it's just it's becoming characters and it's doing all this. It's like fundamentally, most of it is really just you. I mean, the platform that you are using to express yourself through this thing is you.
Yeah.
And that is not actually that elements of it are changeable, but you're going to be limited to a certain degree by what you are and how you process it. So the best thing you can do is go have a life that is very broad and open and try to have, a lot of experience so that you understand things. And, you hear actors all the time going, well, I had this role come up and I didn't know how to do this thing. So I went and took classes and I learned how to do this thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's a part of that is you have to, you're bringing your own experiences um, into the stuff that you're doing. So go have an awesome life outside of this where you're not caring about acting at all. You're out there, you're whatever it is, you're writing, you're cooking, you're learning languages, you're just traveling, you're just doing things, you're meeting people.
Yeah.
And you bring all that experience that we all build. This is why it gets so great as you get older. Older actors are fantastic, is because they've been doing stuff hopefully for years. So you create this very hopefully centered platform that is you. And there's a lot of there's a lot of self-help stuff that you'll see floating around the acting world, and the reason for that is that it's just this is that you really need to check yourself constantly. You need to check your ego. You need to check everything about you and be very aware of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
For me, fundamentally, I couldn't do what I do if I didn't know myself really well, and that includes everything good and bad about myself. And I have to be very honest about all of that, all the time. I probably have any number of daily affirmations as I go every day. Like, are you being an idiot? Yeah, you're being an idiot right now. Are you?
Man.
Are you? Was that a good thing you did? Yes, it was.
I've got a good one for you on that one, Patrick. You just hit a push button on me on that one. I got to do the station ID. Everybody, you're tuning into WRULP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. So I got 2 points that I want to share with you, just like right up the same thing you're talking about. I just finished. I love audiobooks. Like I was saying earlier, I love nonfiction. I love self-development, stuff like that. And I love listening to especially the person's own voice, like their experiences and stuff like that. And you could tell when somebody's being genuine, sincere, and when somebody's just kind of putting on airs or whatever. But I listened to Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I've been wanting to hear that.
It is amazing. It is amazing. I've always liked his acting, first of all, but I didn't pick it up because of the acting, because I like him as a fanboy type thing. I picked it up because I was like, you know what, this dude, he had a speech that I listened to, had nothing to do with really acting or anything like that. He was just talking about life, right?
Yeah.
And so I picked it up and I was like, okay, let me listen to what this guy's got to say, whatever. And there was it's an eclectic group of stories. Like it kind of weaves in and out. And there's he calls them green lights because it's like, okay, these things that you do, and they're like, yeah, go ahead, it's a green light. And sometimes a red light is a green light, he says. But he was talking about when he got out to Hollywood, he had just gotten that role with I think Dazed and Confused.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, he was talking to his agent, and he showed up, and he was talking to the agent, and he was like, when are we going to start doing some, auditions or whatever, something like that, something along the lines of like that. And the agent, I can't remember his name, but the agent tells him, he's like, get out of here. You're not ready. You don't get out of here, go somewhere, come back when you've got that off your mind, because they can, you're desperate, and they can tell, he's
Yep.
like, you have to want it, but not need it. And
Yep.
so him and his buddies, McConaughey and his buddies, went to Europe, took a motorcycle trek across Europe, and just totally forgot about wanting to act and stuff like that. And he got his mind right, and he got involved in living life.
Yep.
And I feel like that's integral for every part of life, because wherever you go, this is one thing I tell people all the time, but wherever you go, take you with you. Be
Mm-hmm.
you. Don't try to be. I can't be Patrick. You can't be Adam. That's one of the reasons why people like having different friends.
The thing that I tell people all the time, very simple quotable quotes that I came up with is, be an interesting person first, and you will be an interesting actor. You'll be interesting to watch.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that. The other part I want to share with you that you touched on was I was actually talking to my son yesterday, and I had a weird experience at a store, and we were talking about it afterwards, and I was like, you know what? I said, I didn't start any kind of conflict with that person, but I didn't stop. I didn't, I'm not one of these people to start stuff with people, but I'm also one not to really back off, back down. And it wasn't it was just one of those things where it was kind of like the person, I was like, hey, all right, I'm done with this conversation or whatever. And I walked away, and the other person's like, well, you have a nice day, kind of snarking. I was like, I'm going to have a nice day, and I hope you do too. And so my son and I were talking, and he was like, yeah, you didn't have to do that. And I was like, I know. I said, I didn't have to. And he's like, yeah, sometimes you kind of, just take it to that next level. And that's one of the things, like, kind of like having to check myself. Like sometimes people will be confrontational for no reason, and you kind of have to think like, okay, well, why is this person being snarky, or why is this person jealous, or why is this person, why do they have an ego? Has nothing to do with you at all, right? It's just one of those things where it's how you process it or how you react to it, or how you proactively are involved or not involved in that situation. And so yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
have to
mean,
check myself too.
we all have, everybody has horrible little moments, and hopefully they're not horrible people. They're just having a horrible moment.
Yeah.
And I mean, yesterday I'm out and about and I'm doing things, and there's traffic and people in lines at the shopping, at the store, and I little stressors.
Yeah. Yeah.
And eventually it's just like I come home and I'm just like, oh, I'm really in a bad mood now. And
You have to kind of unfurl all of that and just get it out of your system.
yeah, and then I take a breather, I go somewhere, and I'll sit and I'll go, why am I so angry? Why?
Yeah.
Just process it, take a moment, step away. And sometimes it takes a few minutes, sometimes it takes a couple hours, but
Yeah. Yeah.
everybody is capable of doing it. But you have to be honest with yourself, and you have to call yourself on your own stuff. And that I think is fundamentally what people screw up in life, is they
Yeah.
fail to call themselves on things that they're doing that are actually legitimately kind of terrible and eating them up.
They like to drink their own tea, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I play
And by that, I
quite
mean, like, people like to believe in their own,
yeah. Oh yeah,
nonsense sometimes.
I mean, I play a lot of pretty questionably, people with a lot of questionable morals,
Which is
and
so
some.
crazy for me because you're like the nicest guy ever, but you always have some kind of like role where you are like the psycho type killer, or the bad, like the guy that you're like, oh man, I don't know about that guy. He's following me down the alley type guy. But
I
you're
mean,
like the nicest guy in real life.
I learned years ago. I'm a big guy. I'm 6'4", and I've been that way since I was 15 or whatever. And I'm kind of, I've gotten comfortable with myself enough at this age that I can be very personable, but in a lot of ways, I am actually very introverted. When I was younger, I was really introverted. So
Hmm.
I, and so some of that I actually noticed was like my times as a kid, my times trying to be extroverted usually came out weird and bad and spastic. So
Yeah.
I
Everybody has
kind
those
of,
awkward teenage years.
yeah, the world has a way of beating you up when you do stuff that's
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
So I paid attention and analyzed, wow, why did that go really wrong? And I just got better at knowing myself, and you get past the awkward stage. So, but I also realized very quickly, because I was big and quiet, that people tended to be intimidated by me.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, I
it
know the
doesn't matter
feeling.
what I do.
Yeah, I
You
know
know,
the
I,
feeling.
even to this day, does not matter.
Yeah.
Like if I do not say anything and I walk into a room with my just general resting expression, most people are going to look at me and go, "Ooh, that guy is kind of freaky."
Yeah.
Um,
I know what you're saying.
and
I
that's
have
what I
that same
carry.
problem too. I'm not as tall as you, but I'm 6 foot and I'm
Yeah,
stocky built, and I have the same problem where people it's not me. It's not me trying to be intimidating or anything like that, but I have the same thing, and I have to. It's almost like you have to be like a little overly cautious with people. Kind of like hey, get to know me type thing first, but.
but and I'm the kind of person, like, I do tend to. I'm not comfortable just walking up to people and going, "Hi."
Hmm.
I will never be that
Hi,
person,
I'm
and I know
Patrick.
that
How are
about
you?
myself.
Yeah, I know.
So I'm more comfortable kind of sitting on the sidelines, watching people, taking it all in, figuring out the room, and then kind of walking into it. which also makes people look at me and go, "My God, he's a predator of some
Oh
sort." You know,
gosh.
he's just
Like, why
creepy.
is he
He's just,
sitting over there in the corner?
yeah, you know, it's like it's just me kind of getting my bearings
Yeah, yeah,
on
being a
what's going
wallflower a little
on.
bit. Yeah.
So, you know, as soon as I feel comfortable and I've got my bearings, I'm more than happy to go run out into the world and, you know, start chatting. But the thing is, that's an energy that I carry with me, and I carry it certainly when I'm being cast. I carry that into the room with me. So a
Yeah.
lot of the casting directors are going to be looking at me, going, "Wow, he's an intimidating guy." So I get cast that way a lot, and I'm fine with that. I get it. That's, you know, I have played nice guys. I am very good at doing that. Um, but for the most part, I'm probably, you know, 75% of the time, I'm going to be walking into rooms and people are going to go, "Ooh, you're intimidating."
Yeah.
So I play intimidating people, and that's fine. I learned a long time ago how to deal with the components that go into playing these types of characters. We're all capable of horrendous evil. We're all capable of, you know, I don't care who you are, twisted thoughts go through your head at some point. something Something's going through your mind, you know, a flutter of something like, "Ooh, that was horribly dark, and I'll just put that somewhere else and keep moving." You know, that happens to all of us. So the only thing that's maybe functionally different with me is that I'm honest about that happening, and I store it away somewhere in my head, and it will come out to play. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I get paid to let that out to play every now
Yeah.
and then.
You know, so I got something too, Patrick. Yeah, Bill Cooper is in the house. He comes in like 5 o'clock, and he's an actor friend of mine. He does the radio show and all, but I don't know if you know Patrick.
Very well. How you doing,
Okay, there you
Patrick?
go.
Yeah.
So he comes in. I figured, hold on, let me get Bill a headset.
I can get him. Thank you.
There you go. But yeah, it's like Bill's a tall fella, very congenial, very friendly. But we were just talking about like, you know, we all have our bad days or whatever. You have to reset, and you know, sometimes just walking like Patrick, for example, he gets cast into a lot of ominous roles or whatever.
I know why. Patrick, you're ominous.
Can you hear him?
Yep.
Okay, good. Yeah, but we've been talking, Bill. We've been talking about acting and stuff like that, and actually, Bill was in. You played the devil in that role. I actually had talked to Patrick with that Devil's Due,
Mm-hmm.
and Bill played the devil. I think he pulled it off. You were like really good.
I when I act now, Patrick, I think you're a terrific actor. I really do.
Oh,
And
thank you. Thank you.
yes, and in fact, you've been to my house one time for something that we were
Yeah.
doing. But I always go low key. I don't try to be big, even if it's a big part. I think I come across better when I just level out and come in, you know, under the radar, and that's what works for me. Everyone has their own different way of acting, and to me, even if it's big, like if I had to get really mad, I'd do it more controlled mad, so they see it in my eyes.
Like a
You know,
simmer.
rather than just
Yeah.
banging the table and
Just
everything.
simmering and-
Exactly. You know, I mean, that's my take on what I do.
Yeah, Gene Hackman had this great thing that he said about the way that he approaches stuff, because he often plays these very, very forceful roles. But particularly like in the movie, I think it was Mississippi Burning. You know, he read the script and he said, "I could have played that, you know, very straight. He's just a very, you know, hard kind of cop, you know, going into this thing." But he played it, when you watch that film, he plays it with a lot of humor. Like, he's laughing at people all the time.
Yeah.
And the reason he did that was that it keeps everybody off guard, so that when he does turn up the scenes a notch into very forceful, you know, kicking somebody's butt,
Right.
it has a massive effect.
That's
The
a shock and awe
juxtaposition
type
between
effect,
those
yeah.
two is insane.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so fascinating to watch him because he does that consistently in his movies.
Well, the French Connection, that was the same thing. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
he was
Yeah.
kind of funny in that, through most of it. But when he had to make his point, did you ever pick your toes in Poughkeepsie?
Mm-hmm.
You paid attention just the way he said it. It was just direct, delivered, staring at you. You got it then. He didn't have to go over the top to do that.
Hold that thought, y'all. We got to do the mid-break hour station announcements.
The Live Oak Public Library System offers local residents access to hundreds of thousands of movies, television programs, albums, audiobooks, ebooks, and digital comic books for free on your streaming television and mobile devices through the Hoopla app. Supported devices include Roku, Fire, Apple TV, iPhone, and Android, among others. The selection is vast. All you'll need is your library card. Find the Hoopla app on your device and more information at liveoakpl.org.
What does it mean when we say that WRUU is a community radio station? It doesn't just mean that we invite the community to create programming. And it doesn't just mean that we are a voice for the community. It also means that we are counting on the community to keep us going. And you are the community. Almost all of our modest budget comes from small annual or monthly donations from listeners like you. You get to enjoy our community-focused programming because many others have stepped forward to do their part. Now do your part by joining our community of listener donors. Go to wruu.org right now and make a one-time or monthly donation. And thank you for supporting Savannah's community radio station, 107.5 FM.
WRUU-LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul.
You are listening to
All right, we are back on air, and you're listening to The Adam Messer Show. I'm your host, Adam Messer, and my special guest today is Patrick Roper. And then we have Mr. Bill Cooper in the house, who just joined us. He's got his show coming up at 5, the Savannah at Night. How do you say it?
Savannah at Night. That's
Savannah
simple,
at Night.
yeah.
And then, you know what I've really been enjoying, Bill? And, Patrick, I don't know if you've seen these or not yet, but I have been really enjoying the stories that you've been telling on the postcards
From Lowell.
from Lowell.
Every Wednesday, 15 to 18 minutes,
Yeah.
and it's just nonsense. It's unscripted. Chad Carvel, who's with me on my radio show, comes and joins us, and we just have imaginary situations. We never script it. All we do is give a premise to each other and then run with it. And we have people call in, phony people trying to date them. And it's just they're absurd people, and we just have fun with it. And we do that. But I start off with I heard you say earlier how you were an introvert when you were young. Well, so was I, too. Up until around age 13, I was scared of my own shadow. And then I just decided one night in bed, I remember it, I'm not going to live like this. This isn't the way I want to live. And I just asserted myself after that, and it just turned my life around. But anyway, it's a lot of fun. I start with when I was a kid, and I can actually remember back till I was 2 years old, things that happened in my life. And I just tell little stories about it for 5 minutes, and then we get into the nonsense. And it just... already, I think this past week we've hit 400 views,
I think
which
it's cool.
is pretty darn good for Facebook to me.
The tie-in for me for that is like with acting and comedy. We were just talking about creating that tension or whatever. Like you were talking about with Gene Hackman or whatever. I always remember him from Superman. That's like I always think of him from Superman. That's for me, that's it. I know he's done a lot of other roles, but him playing Lex Luthor was always like I just always see him as Lex Luthor. But I think that is the same kind of you have that dramatic build up for either like a line with like Gene or like a punchline with a joke. You want to have that emphasis, or you want to have that build up, and then you have that climax of here's the line, or here's the joke punchline. And it delivers, or but some folks have it and some folks don't, and I don't know. It's I think you can practice timing, but
Yeah. I agree with that. There's certainly a lot of people that will say, well, you can teach, you can teach acting, you can teach comedy, you can teach these things, and they're like, up to a point, yeah, kind of. My personal feeling is that experience will teach you quicker than anything. Particularly in comedy.
Yeah.
Like, comedy is great because this is one reason why I think stand-up comedians have a tendency to be really good dramatic actors. These are guys and girls who are used to going up in front of an audience and being eviscerated.
Yep.
Because it's immediate. You're going to get heckled, you're going to get booed, you're going to get, you're going to know what lands and what doesn't. So you learn timing fast.
I loved Robin Williams. I think he is one of the best examples of, that being able to, go from one medium to the other. And of course, we know that, he had bipolar disease. I have bipolar disease. And, those mood swings that go back and forth, but I feel like he was always himself. If he was being funny or if he was being serious, that was actually him.
I've said this long before I did comedy, long before I acted. Acting is the hardest comedy you can do. It really is. That timing thing, and not everyone has it. You can ever have someone tell you a joke and you say, man, it fell flat. Someone else will tell you the same joke 6 months later and you're rolling on the floor laughing.
Yeah.
They have that ability to do it. Whether or not that can be taught, I don't know. But I tell all the comedians, there's 2 ingredients you have to have. Number 1, you have to want to do it. So don't be afraid. Get up there, and don't be afraid of failing. Everyone fails their first few sets, but you got to keep coming back. And number 2, always go up there sober, because if not, you'll be the only one in the place thinking you're funny.
Yeah. We'll see. One of my favorite genres are any kind of like action, horror, whatever, plus comedy. I like, those kind of things. Even some rom-coms I like, but I like situation comedies. Grew up watching, situation comedies and things like that. And I love those kind of things because I like a good laugh. But I also like action. Like we were talking earlier about Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan. He's got a new movie that just came out with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it's Iron Mask. And it's an action movie, but there's a lot of like little kind of funny nuance type stuff. Not necessarily like a joke, but kind of some funny nuance stuff. What's up, Chatster?
Heyo.
How you doing, man?
I'm being nuanced.
Are you?
Yes.
You can nuance in the hallway then. Just kidding, man. He's sitting at the door staring at me. I'm like, what are you doing? I'm just kidding, Jay. You can get a seat if you want.
I'm fine.
Look at him. He's crying now. Oh, my gosh. I'm sorry. Chad. I didn't mean to make you cry. But no, I was just thinking about that. Like, the timing and all. And, it does take somebody, that actually loves doing it. You can feel it when they love doing it.
Well, what Jackie Chan learned really quick was that, of course, everybody after Bruce Lee died, everybody was looking for the new Bruce Lee, and they were making tons of movies that said, Bruce Lee, and they had some other actor that kind of looked like him and had a similar style and whatnot. Mm-hmm. But Jackie Chan realized quickly that he was in danger of going down that road and probably just being not remembered. So he went the exact opposite direction. He decided to turn every bit of action into a comedy bit.
It worked for him, too. It worked very well.
Yep.
That's one of the things, like, I watched an interview with Jackie Chan. He was talking about his relationship with Bruce Lee, and Bruce Lee, told him to, be yourself, basically.
And he also, there are a few films that he's done where he actually plays, like, very serious dramatic roles. There's a film out, I think you can find it on Amazon or Netflix or something. It's called The Foreigner, and it's with Pierce Brosnan. And it is an absolute straight dramatic role.
Oh, yeah, the one where his daughter's kidnapped?
Yeah, his daughter gets killed in a bombing by Irish terrorists.
Okay, yeah.
And
Peter Bronson was like the main guy, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was sort of
bad
modeled on Jerry Adams, who was the leader of Sinn Féin in Northern Ireland. And so, he plays this father, this grieving father who just he realizes the cops aren't going to, do anything for him. So he's got a certain set of skills.
Right.
He goes out there and he, takes care of business and finds out, who killed his daughter. But it's an absolute straight dramatic role for him, and he is brilliant.
Yeah, there weren't any funny moments really in that movie, in my
No,
opinion.
no, but he is fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean,
Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
Jim Carrey. Excellent.
Did you ever see
Excellent.
that movie he did called 13 where he played that guy that went crazy?
No, I didn't see that.
It's a psychotic thriller.
23?
23. Yes, thank you, Chadster. 23. Oh my gosh, that was a really good psychological thriller.
and Richard Pryor, people do not give enough credit to Richard Pryor for how really good a dramatic actor he was. But the thing is, comedians, because a lot of comedians are coming up there and eviscerating themselves on stage every night with a lot of pain. I mean, there's, listen to any comedian for
only if Adam's in the
you're
audience.
listening to
I don't heckle
basically a lot of pain. You're listening to a person who has learned how to cope with pain through laughter.
You're right. You're right.
And there's a lot of times, Bill, that I will pass up a good opportunity to slash somebody.
When was that?
Every day. I do that. You know why? Because there are people that like to dish it out, but they cannot take it.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
They
that's the
cannot
rule
take
number
it.
1A.
Yeah.
If you can't take it, don't. Silence.
Well, there's a lot of folks though,
Silence.
they confuse sarcasm for wit and humor.
Right. But again, that's a whole different deal. I mean, I'm talking about
But we're talking
humor.
about comedy,
About comedy, it
Yeah.
is, and once again, it is so hard to have that timing and to do that.
Yeah.
And as I said before, I get into it. I'm not saying that I am a better actor because I do comedy.
No, but you're
I
clever.
know it helps.
You're a
I
clever
know it
fellow.
helps. And there's whatever you think
Yeah.
of Jackie Gleason. Jackie Gleason,
Yeah.
his dramatic roles were outstanding.
Yeah.
Oscar worthy. I mean, as I said, Jim Carrey,
Well, it's like
Bob Hope.
Patrick. I like the roles that you play, Patrick, because you're clever. with the for example, when you played that role with the Florida Girls, I could imagine how hard it would have been just to be the stick. That's you're just standing there. All this crazy stuff's going around you, and you're not showing any emotion. I mean, how hard you had to bottle that up.
The way that I saw that character is that with all this wackiness going on, all these insane people and these people doing just the stupidest things in their lives, I'm the guy who's I was the vehicle for the audience in that situation, in those scenes of going, what is wrong with these people?
Yeah.
So that's primarily what I was doing, was supporting the way that being a vehicle for the audience into those situations.
I guess my whole point with this, talking about the comedy and talking about the acting and all, is going back to your point earlier about being yourself, showing up, doing you. You show up as Bill Cooper or Chad Carvel or Patrick Roper, or Adam Messer. You just do you. Don't try to be somebody else. Like in the example with Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan. They were both doing kung fu or whatever, but Jackie Chan could not be a Bruce Lee knockoff. He had to be Jackie Chan. And, he's had a 40, 50-year career, that he's been doing, acting and production and directing. And
you will functionally do better in this business the more that you acknowledge that you have to be you. It has to come from you.
Well, with Lucille Ball taking Arnold Schwarzenegger under her wing, when he did his first movie, Hercules in New York, he had the dub over. They called him Arnold Strong, had an American accent dub over because they said, whatever. And one of the things that Schwarzenegger said was they told us, that they basically there would never be another Arnold. That he built himself up, but he is not a self-made man. He is a product. He's like a product of all of these people that came together.
No one is self-made.
No.
They can say that all they want, but even wealthy people, right?
Oh yeah.
Seriously, and not to get into a big deal here, but the ones that don't even pay taxes, they use the taxes. They use the airports, the hospitals, the roads, the fire and police. So no one's self-made. Everyone helped make someone make it, no matter how much they want to think that. So I never bought that someone's self-made. They're not. They just won't admit it.
Well, I love it because Schwarzenegger is another example of how they never had a Schwarzenegger before that. They didn't. It was right after World War II. They didn't have that kind of character. Bill's sitting there like,
who was the one?
There was a guy that
played in the '60s movie Hercules and that. Who was that big guy? What the heck was his name?
That was Schwarzenegger's role model.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So it reminded me of him. Not exactly, but he reminded me of him. He had no comedy though. That was the difference. He just did the strongman thing.
But there wasn't a guy like Schwarzenegger though. Like for like action movies and stuff like that, and being a champion world bodybuilder and that
he
kind
made
of stuff.
himself likable, and this is a big thing. If you're doing comedy or if you're doing acting, if you're likable, you're going to have more people pay attention to you.
He had that range too, from like being a serious actor into being like he wanted to do comedy,
right?
And he just had that evolution of stuff, and I feel like that's so important. Like what we're talking about is be you, and don't try to put on airs and try to be fake.
Yeah.
You don't have to remember anything when you're you. You have just yourself. Yeah. If you're trying to be someone else, you have to remember stuff. Oh, how would he act now? How would she act now? You don't have to do that when you're you. I mean, it's just so much easier.
Right. Speaking of being you, you're listening, everybody, to WRUU. LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul.
Oh, may I just say this, and I got to step out for a few minutes. Nice to talk to you, Patrick. Nice to talk to you again. I hope things get better when people can get together again, and, we all hope that. But I just want to say that for the first half hour of my show coming up, Adam Messer is going to be our guest.
Who?
Adam Messer. So we are thrilled about that. Yeah. So anyway,
I don't ever try to plug myself, Bill. You're a swell
Patrick,
guy. You are such a swell guy.
Excuse me. I wish you the best, Patrick, and very nice talking with you. And I hope you tune in for the beginning of our show at least, and listen to Adam because he's going to roast me.
I am not going to roast you, Bill. We might play wine or beef.
Oh, we will.
They got this funny game called wine or beef, and yeah. Anyway, so. Oh man, Chad's got like this little devious look about him. He's like, you two got together and planned something, didn't you?
I was reading your book.
Oh, you're reading the book. Okay.
From Valhalla Publishing.
Oh, I didn't know you read, Chad. You're a reader.
I don't.
I didn't say you're not literate.
Already.
Yeah, I'm a literate by choice. Not
oh
reader.
my gosh, you're a literate by choice.
Not reader.
A-literate, not illiterate.
Yeah, it's not reading so much as having somebody else read it and explain it to you. Whatever.
Yeah, but so Patrick, we got about 7 minutes left. I really have enjoyed talking with you, and I know, I'm looking forward to when we actually can do some meetups and stuff like that. Do you have some just, not necessarily advice, but do you have anything like you'd like to, kind of share with people that you feel like has worked for you and that might be able to help them?
Certainly we've touched on a bunch of stuff, but, be yourself, learn, be honest about who you are. Those are really some of the fundamental things. But the other big critical thing that we haven't really touched on yet, so many people get into this, they look at acting as an art, and it is an art. It's an art, it's a skill, it's a craft. There are components that are going to be absolutely natural to you, and other things that you are going to very much learn that are skills. The one thing that most people kind of screw up on when they start out this is they fail to understand that it's a business. Mm-hmm. You gotta learn as much attention as you were putting into the art and the craft of it, you gotta put into the business, and you got to figure out the appropriate ways to market yourself, the appropriate ways to contact people and connect with people. there are so many nuances to the business side of that, and that tends to be overwhelming for a lot of people. Again, there are lots of books out there. There's lots of, great videos, and I certainly try to post stuff on that subject on the site. But yeah, if you put a good 50-50 ratio, learn the art and craft of acting and learn the business of it, then you will do monumentally better. So many people will come into this only trying to address the art. I just want to be, a glorious actor, and I want to, emote on stage and feel, happy about what I'm doing. But if you don't know that it's a business, you're going to have a really hard time. So learn the business. And that's where mentors come in too.
I completely agree
mentors
with
will
that.
teach you quicker than anything. Do this, do not do this.
Yeah, that's such great. That's so true, Patrick. With that too, and I know we didn't really talk about it, but that people have a tendency, like when you're talking about ego earlier or whatever. I've put relationships first, and I encourage other people to put relationships first, and that's what you were just talking about. Understanding that it is a business, so if it's a production studio and they're wanting to cast somebody for a role or whatever, or say for instance with the books, if I'm wanting to pay an author, it's because I feel like that story is going to be good for our audience or whatever, right? It is a business. I mean, like I not just doing it out of the generosity of my heart. I'm trying to sell books. The production company, they're trying to fill seats in the audience, the theaters, or trying to sell, those digital views or whatever it is now. And so I feel like that part does get overlooked a lot in any kind of creative endeavor. That, hey, learn about business. Don't be the writer that thinks that it's up just to the publicist to promote the book, or don't be the actor that they never promote the movie that they're in or whatever. Don't be that person. You did that, you were part of that role, be proud of it and share it with the world.
I connect when I am in something. Usually there's NDAs involved and you can't talk about stuff for long periods of time, and which is always like when you're starting out, that's more frustrating than when you start getting into it and you start realizing more and more of how that works. It starts getting more comfortable, but I can imagine being like the people that were in Star Wars that had to basically not tell anybody for 2 years. That's gotta be aggravating. But there's stuff like I learn. I'm in contact with the PR people and the studio and producers and all that, and find out what I can say, what I cannot say, and then we can put it into okay, start promoting it now, and they'll usually give you guidelines for that sort of stuff,
and like a media kit and things like that you can use. And
it's like I want to help them make this as successful as possible. And they just need to tell me what I can and cannot do in that format, and I'm more than happy to do that. So,
well, I really love being able to talk with you today, Patrick. I so much appreciate you coming on the show today.
Yeah, absolutely. It was fun.
Dude, where can people check out your your IMDb or whatever?
So you can obviously you can check me out on IMDb. Always new stuff coming there. You can certainly Google my name. I check. I do checks on my name every now and then on Google just to see what's floating around out there. And I do have a lot of actually some good interviews. Both video and some written stuff. So there's a lot out there. It's kind of cool when I Google my name. Actually, it's like, wow, there's actually a ton of stuff out there now. So.
That's awesome. I really appreciate it, Patrick. So the podcast will be available later on tonight, everybody. If you missed any of this, or if you're just now tuning in, I've been talking with my good friend Patrick Roper, who is an actor and has done a lot of different things, but all around, Patrick, you're a really good guy. I really appreciate you sharing your wealth of knowledge with everybody. And
thank you.
So, all right. So everybody.